Oh God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be pleasing in your sight. Oh God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So sometimes my friends and I play a game. And I feel like you need to know that many of my friends are either clergy or have MDivs before I say this, because I'm going to tell you what the game is, and you're going to say, Rachel, that's not a game. So I need you to know. But the game that we play is, which disciple do you think you would be and why? There's Peter, who always wants to be the best and the closest in with Jesus. He has a bit of pick-me energy. There's John and James, the sons of thunder, whose mom asks if they can sit at the right and the left-hand side of Jesus. And then there's Thomas, who really needs to know things before he can believe in them. And then there's Mary, who's living with like minimum 13 dudes. And she gets the gospel better than any of them, but she still has to handle Judas questioning all of her financial decisions. It's a good game. It goes for days. It goes longer if someone has recently watched The Chosen or Jesus Christ Superstar, if someone's really into the Gospels. We get into it. These days, I have found myself resonating a lot with Simon the Zealot. Simon, who wanted Jesus to come with political power, to come with might as much as mercy. We call God powerful rescuer, so come on, powerfully rescue us. I have to imagine that Simon was on the edge of our story tonight, hoping things would amp up into political action. I imagine that he was there with the disciples of John the Baptist, hoping something would happen. Our passage today in Matthew 11 catches the very end of a story that starts with the disciples of John the Baptist coming to Jesus because John had been put in prison. John had been put in prison because he was telling the truth about what was happening. King Herod of Judea, placed in his role by the Roman Empire, didn't like that he was doing it. Herod didn't like that John was telling people what Herod was up to. Herod was having an affair with his brother's wife, as bad then as it is now, maybe worse. And John was publicly saying both that it was happening and that it was wrong. So Herod had him put in prison. No trial, no due process, just a person imprisoned on the whim of a tyrant. So John, scared and imprisoned, sends his followers to Jesus. He has a question he'd like them to ask Jesus. Are you the one who is to come? Or are we to wait for another? It's an important question. Are you the one who is to come? Are you who I've said you are? Are you who I've led these people to believe you are? Cousin, is your story true? Jesus is, of course, John's cousin. The two grew up in the same family. John baptized Jesus in the Jordan. John wants to know if Jesus is the Messiah, the one who is to come, because things don't quite look the way he might imagine they would look if he is. John's a lot more in prison than he might expect to be. The book of Isaiah is full of references to what it's going to be like when God comes close to their people. Jesus' reply to John shows that he knows this. When John's followers ask, are you the one who is to come? Jesus says, tell John what you see and hear. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, those with a skin disease are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have the good news brought to them. He's basically quoting Isaiah 35, verses 4 to 6. These are the signs in the book of Isaiah that God is coming to save you. Behold, your God will come with vengeance, with the recompense of God. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, the ears of the deaf shall be unstopped. Then the lame man shall leap like a deer. He says in so many words, I am who John says I am. These are the things that the prophet Isaiah said would happen when God comes close to their people, signs that God is with you. The thing is, Jesus doesn't say all the signs. He says sight to those who can't see, hearing to those who are deaf, healing for those who are hurt, good news brought to the poor. He even raises the dead. But he skips two things. And if I were John the Baptist or a follower of John the Baptist or Simon the Zealot hanging out on the sidelines, these are things that I would want to hear. He skips the vengeance, and importantly, he skips the saving. In Isaiah 61, God promises to proclaim liberty to the captives and open the prisons to those who are bound as a sign that God has come close to their people. That's the sign I would want if I were in prison and looking for a sign that God was who God said they were. That's not what Jesus does. Jesus, confusingly, thanks God. Thanks God that the powerful and prideful haven't figured out who he is, that only those without power know him. He calls out to those who are weary and carrying heavy burdens and promises them rest. For he is gentle and humble of heart, and his yoke is easy and his burden is light. The people in this story who we know are weary and carrying heavy burdens are John and his disciples. And John's disciples are headed back to their leader in prison, and he is going to be executed by the state in a twisted show of pride and power in a few chapters. Jesus is going to be executed by the state in a twisted show of pride and power in a few more chapters. That isn't restful or easy. Humble, I'll grant, but these outcomes don't sound gentle. Had Jesus said, God is with us, liberty to the captives. That would have made sense. If he had said, the journey is exhausting and my yoke is hard, that would have made sense. Gentle, if I'm a follower of John the Baptist, isn't even in my imagination right now. I've put all my hopes in the set the captives free basket. I need to feel safe to feel gentle, and I don't feel safe, I feel scared. Gentleness, the kind of deep, soft tenderness born out of compassion and curiosity and arms open, enveloping love that we call gentleness. That's a fruit of the Spirit that's hard to get at when you're tired. It's hard to get at when you're scared. Gentleness, tenderness leading with love is easier with safety or with courage. Gentleness comes easier when someone else is gentle first. Gentleness and humbleness of heart must have felt like a blow to John's disciples. When you expect power and vengeance, gentleness doesn't sound like very much. When you expect rescue, an easy yoke doesn't sound like anything. The easy yoke we can do something about. With blue letter Bibles and concordances, we can wrestle the translation of easy, the Greek word Christos, until we find that it means something more like fit for purpose, more like of the same kind and character of that from which it comes, more like useful and well-fitting. We can take my yoke is easy and say, well, it's not easy, but it is like God. It's not easy, but it is well-fitting. It's not easy, but it is a yoke of solidarity with Jesus. And that makes sense. That feels like something Jesus could say to John in good conscience, to his cousin, who is going to die at the hand of empire because he too is going to die at the hand of empire. It won't be worth it because it will be easy. It will be worth it because I am with you. I am who you say I am. Your yoke is my yoke. God has come close to their people. If God has come close to their people, then maybe gentleness makes sense too. If God has come close to their people, if the blind can see, the sick are well, the deaf can hear, the dead are raised, the poor have good news brought to them, then maybe gentleness is available to the disciples, despite what all the facts seem to say. Not because everything is easy, but because God has come close to their people. Maybe they can be gentle. Not because the humans around them were gentle, but because God is gentle. Because the Son has come close to their people with deep, soft tenderness, with compassion and curiosity, with arms open, enveloping love. Jesus has yoked himself with John and the disciples, and they have yoked themselves with him. God has come close to their people. Jesus is who they were waiting for. I wonder how John's disciples felt when they heard that. I wonder how Simon the Zealot felt when he heard that. I think I'd feel shame, feel like I'd gotten it wrong, picked the wrong proof text, missed the whole point, should probably pack up my things and go wrong. But gentleness doesn't produce shame. Leading with love doesn't push people away. Gentleness comes with compassion and curiosity and arms open love. So I imagine Jesus would stop Simon and the disciples before they got too far, before they spiraled out, and remind them that they were loved, and remind them that their gifts were needed too. When people live within oppressive systems, resistance looks a lot like difference. Looks like a lot of people working in a lot of different ways to achieve liberation and healing. We need John the Baptist shouting the truth, and we need Simon zealous for political change. We need Mary living with 13 dudes and getting the heart of the gospel better than any of them. We need Peter insecure and so keen to help. We need Thomas checking all the facts as much as we need Jesus' gentle and humble heart. Jesus cautions us that resistance doesn't look like vengeance, but it does look like a lot of other things. The blind get their sight, the deaf can hear, the sick are healed, the dead are raised, the poor have the good news brought to them. What oppressive empire could stand when faced with that? With the people healed and whole and standing up together in all the ways they know how. The disciples ask Jesus if he is the Messiah they were waiting for. He is. But we're the people we're waiting for too. May we have the strength to join in the work. Amen.